The Valoran research station hung suspended in the void between stars, its crystalline structure catching the faint light of distant galaxies. Inside, Commander Thys pressed her four-fingered hand against the observation deck window, her large black eyes reflecting the endless darkness beyond. For 300 cycles, the Valorans had maintained this listening post at the edge of civilized space, monitoring the quiet regions where only the brave or foolish dared to venture. Today, the silence broke. The emergency beacon screamed across 17 different frequencies, each one carrying the same desperate message encoded in the universal mathematical language that all spacefaring species understood. Thys's elongated skull crest flared with alarm as her neural implants translated the signal. The message was simple, terrifying, and final. They consume everything. We are the last. Do not let our death be meaningless. Beware the devourers. Attached to the message were coordinates, star charts, and fragments of sensor data, showing massive organic ships that defied conventional understanding. These weren't vessels built by intelligent beings. They were living nightmares that moved through space like cosmic parasites, draining entire worlds of all biological material before moving on to the next feast. Within hours, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 43 peaceful civilizations gathered in the Great Assembly Chamber on Nexus Prime, their holographic forms shimmering with barely contained fear. The Valorans, with their advanced technology and philosophical dedication to peace, had long served as the galaxy's observers and record-keepers. Now Commander Thys stood before them all with news that threatened everything they had built. "The trajectory is clear," Thys announced, her melodious voice carrying across the chamber. "Based on the consumption pattern and speed of advance, the Devourers will reach our outer colonies within 30 standard rotations. Our core worlds will fall within 60. The chamber erupted in panic. The Ashanti delegation, beings of pure energy contained in mechanical shells, flickered rapidly in distress. The aquatic breen churned in their environmental suits, their bioluminescent skin flashing warning patterns. None of them were warriors. The Galactic Council had evolved beyond violence, dedicating themselves to art, science, and exploration. Their weapons were archaeological artifacts, their military strategies theoretical exercises studied only by historians. Ambassador Kirill of the Valoran Diplomatic Corps raised a tendril for silence. "There is one option we haven't considered," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to him. The quarantined world. The death world the ancient surveys marked as too dangerous to approach. Earth. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. Every spacefaring race knew of Earth, though none had visited in over a millennium. The planet was legendary for its hostile environment, crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, and most terrifying of all, an ecosystem where everything evolved to kill everything else. The few ancient probes that had surveyed it reported a young species that had somehow thrived in these conditions, but they were considered too primitive and violent to contact. "You suggest we ask barbarians for help?" The Korvac representative's mechanical voice dripped with disdain. Kirill's crest lowered in acknowledgement of the distaste. "I suggest we ask survivors for help. Any species that can thrive on a death world might have the kind of mindset we need to face the Devourers. We have tried to fight them with logic and technology. Perhaps what we need is something more primal." The debate raged for hours, but in the end, desperation won. Ambassador Kirill was given a small, fast ship and clearance to breach the quarantine around Earth. As his vessel departed, many in the Council believed they were sending him to his death. None imagined he would return with hope. Earth's orbital defense platform detected Kirill's ship the moment it entered the solar system. Captain Marcus Stone stood in the command center, his weathered face illuminated by tactical displays showing the alien vessel's approach. Beside him, Director Elena Vasquez of Earth's United Defense Force studied the readings with sharp, calculating eyes. "It's not attacking," Stone observed, his hand still resting on the weapon controls. "In fact, it's broadcasting something. Looks like a mathematical sequence. Universal constants," Vasquez confirmed. "It's trying to establish peaceful communication. After all this time hiding in our little corner of space, we finally have a visitor who comes in peace." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, but had chosen to remain hidden. Earth's history was written in blood and struggle. They had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, nuclear holocaust, and climate collapse. Each catastrophe had made them harder, stronger, more adaptable. When they finally reached the stars, they found a galaxy full of peaceful races that would likely fear what humanity had become. So they had waited, watched, and prepared. Kirill's ship was guided to a docking bay, where the ambassador emerged into Earth's standard gravity. The Valoran immediately collapsed, his hollow bones struggling under weight 3 times what his species considered normal. Human medical personnel rushed forward, not to attack but to help, placing him in a modified anti-gravity harness that allowed him to stand. "Ambassador Kirill," he gasped, his universal translator converting his words. "I come seeking warriors to fight monsters that threaten all life in the galaxy." Stone and Vasquez exchanged glances. "You want our help in a war?" Stone asked. "I want your help to survive," Kirill corrected. "The Devourers consume everything biological. Entire worlds stripped bare. 43 peaceful civilizations stand in their path, and we have forgotten how to fight. But you never forgot, did you?" Vasquez smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Ambassador, Earth isn't just a death world because of our environment. We made it that way. Every human child learns combat sports. Our entertainment celebrates conflict. We've weaponized everything from split atoms to engineered viruses. We've been preparing for a real enemy for generations. Then you'll help us?" Hope flickered in Kirill's large eyes. Stone activated a holographic display showing Earth's true military might. Hidden fleets in the asteroid belt, orbital stations bristling with weapons, soldiers enhanced with genetic modifications and cybernetic implants. "Ambassador, we've been waiting for a chance to show the galaxy that humans aren't monsters to be feared. We're monsters that protect those who can't protect themselves." Within hours, Earth's war machine activated. Ships that had been disguised as mining vessels shed their camouflage, revealing sleek predatory forms designed for combat. The Mars shipyards, hidden beneath the terraformed surface, opened their massive doors to release humanity's true fleet. Each vessel was a testament to human paranoia and preparation, armed with weapons that the peaceful galaxy had never imagined. But it wasn't just the ships that would shock the galaxy. It was the humans themselves. Captain Stone led the briefing for the first strike force. Around him gathered Earth's finest warriors, each one a product of high-gravity evolution and genetic enhancement. They moved with predatory grace, their eyes holding the cold calculation of apex predators who had learned to work in packs. "The Devourers are biological," Stone explained, displaying the limited data from Kirill. "They adapt, consume, and grow stronger. Traditional energy weapons barely slow them down. But we're not going to fight them traditionally." He brought up new displays: biological warfare, nanotechnology, psychological operations. "We're going to fight them the way humans have always fought superior enemies. Dirty, clever, and without mercy." Lieutenant Rodriguez, a woman whose augmented muscles could bend steel, raised her hand. "Sir, the galactic races, won't they fear us after this?" "Maybe," Stone admitted. "But they'll be alive to fear us. And maybe, just maybe, they'll understand that sometimes you need monsters to fight monsters." The fleet prepared to depart, but not before Vasquez had one last conversation with Kirill. The ambassador watched in awe as thousands of human ships formed up in attack formations that seemed chaotic but were actually precisely calculated patterns based on predator pack behavior. "Your people," Kirill said softly. "They're not what we expected." "No," Vasquez agreed. "We're worse. We're everything the galaxy feared we might be. But we chose to be something more. We chose to be protectors." As the human fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, messages went out across Earth. Humanity was done hiding. They were entering the galactic stage not as conquerors but as guardians. The Death Worlders were coming, and for the first time in galactic history, that was good news. The ships vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them 8 billion years of evolution's most dangerous creation, humans who had learned to channel their violence into protection. The Devourers had no idea what they were about to face. They had evolved to be the galaxy's ultimate predators. They were about to meet Earth's. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kelos system, where the Devourers were feeding on their latest victim. Captain Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, humanity's flagship, watching the horror unfold before them. The planet below had once been green and vibrant, home to 3 billion peaceful inhabitants. Now it was gray and dying, covered in writhing biomechanical tendrils that stripped away every molecule of organic matter. The Devourer fleet was unlike anything in human military databases. These weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were living organisms the size of cities, their flesh a horrific fusion of biological matter and technology that defied classification. Tentacles kilometers long reached down to the planet's surface, draining it like massive cosmic leeches. Smaller organisms, each the size of a building, swarmed around the main creatures like antibodies protecting a virus. Jesus Christ, Lieutenant Rodriguez whispered beside Stone. How do you fight something like that? Stone's expression remained cold, calculating. The same way humans always have. We find their weakness and we exploit it without mercy. He turned to his crew. Begin Operation Parasite. All ships deploy the swarm. From the holds of every human vessel, millions of tiny drones emerged. Each one was no larger than a fist, designed not for direct combat but for something far more insidious. They spread out in seemingly random patterns, too small for the Devourers to consider threats. The alien organisms ignored them, continuing their feast on the dying world below. That was their first mistake. The drones attached themselves to the Devourer ships like fleas on a massive beast. Once in place, they began broadcasting. Not weapons fire, not explosions, but something far more disturbing. Sounds. Specifically, sounds calculated to disrupt biological neural patterns. Humanity had learned through countless wars that psychological warfare could be more devastating than any bomb. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The Devourers' synchronized feeding faltered. The massive organisms began to writhe, their tentacles retracting from the planet's surface as confusion spread through their hive mind. For the first time in their existence, they experienced something their evolution hadn't prepared them for. Fear. Ambassador Chiral, observing from the safety of the command ship, trembled as he watched. What are you doing to them? We're introducing them to humanity's oldest weapon, Director Vasquez explained, her voice clinical. Terror. Those drones are broadcasting frequencies that trigger primal fear responses in carbon-based neural systems. We developed them during our Third World War. Turns out fear is universal, but the Devourers were far from defeated. As massive as they were, they adapted quickly. Within minutes, they began generating counter-frequencies, their bioships pulsing with new energy patterns that destroyed the drones. The swarm attack had only bought time, not victory. Phase 2, Stone commanded. Boarding teams prepare for insertion. Across the fleet, humans in powered armor prepared for something no sane species would attempt, directly boarding the living ships. Each warrior was equipped not with conventional weapons, but with humanity's most terrifying creations. Vials of engineered pathogens that could consume biological matter faster than the Devourers themselves, nanotechnology that could rewrite DNA in real time, and most disturbing of all, volunteers who had allowed themselves to be infected with controlled versions of Earth's deadliest organisms. Lieutenant Rodriguez led the first boarding team. As their assault shuttle approached the largest Devourer organism, she could hear her team's steady breathing through the comm system. These weren't just soldiers. They were humans who had grown up on a world where death lurked in every shadow, where microscopic organisms could kill as easily as apex predators. The shuttle pierced the Devourer's outer membrane, boring through flesh that was simultaneously alive and mechanical. Inside, the environment was a nightmare of organic corridors that pulsed with alien life. The atmosphere was toxic, the gravity fluctuated wildly, and the very walls seemed to reach for the intruders. Remember, Rodriguez said, her voice calm despite the horror surrounding them. We're not here to fight fair, we're here to win. The team split up, each warrior carrying out their specific mission. Some planted canisters that released Earth's most aggressive bacteria, organisms that had evolved in the competitive hell of Earth's ecosystem. Others used their armor's built-in flamethrowers, not with regular fire, but with a chemical compound that triggered uncontrolled cellular division in biological matter, causing the Devourer's own flesh to grow so rapidly it consumed itself. But the most effective weapon was something the peaceful galaxy could never have conceived. 3 volunteers, including Sergeant Chen, had allowed themselves to be infected with a weaponized version of Earth's common cold virus, modified to be lethal to non-terrestrial biology. They removed their helmets, breathing the alien atmosphere, knowing they were signing their own death warrants. The effect was instantaneous. The devourer organism's immune system, evolved to consume and adapt to conventional threats, had no defense against a virus that had spent millions of years evolving on Earth's biological battlefield. The infection spread through the creature's nervous system like wildfire, causing its massive form to convulse in agony. Outside, Stone watched as the largest devourer ship began to die from within, but he knew this was only the beginning. The devourers were learning, adapting. Already the other organisms were changing, developing resistances to the human attacks. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from them." The message was simple, transmitted in the same mathematical language the dying civilization had used for their warning. "What are you?" Stone took the communication controls himself. "We are humans. We evolved on a death world, where everything kills everything else to survive. We learned to weaponize nature itself, and now we protect those who cannot protect themselves." The devourer's response was immediate. The remaining organisms began to merge, forming a superorganism larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. It pulsed with new energy, having absorbed and adapted to every attack the humans had thrown at it. This was their ultimate form, a biological horror that could consume entire solar systems. "All ships," Stone commanded, his voice steady. "Prepare for Omega Protocol." Vasquez looked at him sharply. "Marcus, that's never been tested on this scale." "Then we'll make history," Stone replied. He turned to Kirill, who watched with a mixture of awe and terror. "Ambassador, you might want to close your eyes for this. The Omega Protocol was humanity's ultimate biological weapon, something so dangerous that Earth's governments had agreed to use it only as a last resort. It wasn't a virus or bacteria. It was something far more fundamental, human DNA itself, weaponized and released in massive quantities. Every human ship launched specialized missiles that burst in space, releasing clouds of modified human genetic material. To most species it would seem harmless, even pointless. But human DNA carried something unique, the ability to survive and thrive in impossible conditions. It was the genetic code of a species that had survived everything the universe could throw at it. When the clouds reached the superorganism, they didn't attack it. They integrated with it. The devourer, in its hunger to consume and adapt, absorbed the human DNA eagerly, seeing it as just another resource to exploit. That was its final mistake. Human DNA began rewriting the creature from within, not destroying it, but changing it. The aggression remained, but now it was directed inward. The hunger remained, but now it consumed itself. The creature began to tear itself apart. Its own biological imperatives turned against it by genetic code that had evolved on a world where self-destruction was sometimes the only path to survival. The superorganism's death scream echoed across 17 different dimensions, a sound that would haunt the galaxy for generations. When it finally ended, nothing remained but organic debris floating in the void. The human fleet stood victorious, but there was no celebration. Stone opened a channel to all ships and to the observing galactic community. "This is what we are," he said simply. "We are the children of a death world. We are everything you feared and more, but we choose to be your guardians. We choose to stand between you and the darkness." The aftermath changed everything. The Galactic Council lifted Earth's quarantine, not out of trust but out of necessity. They needed humanity's protection, even as they feared what humans were capable of. Ambassador Kirill became the first non-human to set foot on Earth, walking through cities where children played games that would terrify most species, where entertainment celebrated conflict, where the very architecture spoke of a species that expected attack at any moment. But he also saw something else. He saw humans caring for their young with fierce devotion. He saw them creating art from their struggles, beauty from their pain. He saw a species that had looked into the abyss and chosen to become something more than the monsters they could have been. Standing with Stone and Vasquez at the United Nations building, now expanded to include galactic relations, Kirill asked the question that haunted him. "How do you live with such violence inside you?"